I started a movement called Real World Ranching in the USA. I have been doing this for a long time, consulting and doing it on my own farm, as my father and my grandfather were cattlemen. And since a kid, I tried to manage my own small plot of vegetables when I was 12 years old, and I made compost with rabbit's poop. So I had to learn how to do it with low inputs and no chemicals, as I was too small to handle the insecticides and synthetic fertilizers. So I learned, and I had success. Fast forward, I studied agronomy engineer, majored in cattle, in the best university in Mexico. And I bought my first farm. Well, we bought our first farm, my wife and I, 36 years on marriage, thank God. And I found out that applying conventional methods that I had learned in college were degrading my land and were not making a profit. So I had to go back and relearn what I had done when I was a kid. That was, you need to farm like you garden. We need to farm as we garden. No chemical inputs at all. And that's what brings up soil life. Now, you have heard the why with Sarah and Matt, and that's very good and important, and we need to tell our story to the general public so they know that we are the key to regenerating the land, not rewilding. We humans, creativity is the strongest force of nature. So we can do much more by being the good stewards of the land than nature can do by itself. But we need to mimic nature. And I'm going to talk now, I'm going to show a video of how humus, the slow cycling carbon that builds the real fertility of our soils, is created. And it's not as we were led to believe. This is new knowledge. Please play the video. I wanted to be the best in the world in whatever you do. And that's what has been my focus since I was a kid. Because I played basketball, and we were the champions in my city, Tampico, which is close to 1 million people. But when we went to other states, we were defeated. So don't try to be the best in your own village or town or even country. Try to be the best in the world in whatever you do. And for that, I reached out to the best mentors I could find and the best reading material I could find. And thus, now you can see this in all the scientists' journals that talk about how humus, the slow cycling organic matter in your soil, is created, and it started to appear in publications in 2020. From 2020 to now, but Wikipedia and other Google still has the outdated and wrong definition of humus. Humus is a stable fraction of organic matter that cannot be further degraded by the action of microorganisms if you don't till the land and lasts over 100 years. It's the fraction that holds moisture and all necessary nutrients and buffers pH and salts. So the answer to all our problems is to increase humus, which Newman Turner, in his book Fertility Pastures here in 1950 called the heart of the land. If a land was in good heart, the seedlings will do very well, and if it was not, they will die. And we see that now as we have killed soil life by using synthetic fertilizers. So I want to show you how we can create much better and spongy soil with the judicious use of our livestock, be it sheep, cows, horses. Okay? So now, and thank you to our sponsors. Okay, that's me, and that's my website. I have a weekly podcast and over 100 YouTube videos on my channel. Next, please. Oh, now I can do it. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Since I learned from a book called From Grass to Milk by McKinnon, written in 1950-some in New Zealand, that the main determinant of profitability on a grazed livestock farm is stocking rate, I have been profitable since, because I focus on high productivity at very low inputs by harnessing low-cost biological methods. Can you all hear me well? Yeah? Okay. It seems like when I talk like this, it's louder, and when I talk like this, it's not. Okay, and I have bronchitis, so sorry. Okay, we have now over 100 students in more than 27 countries implementing this with success. What I'm going to try to teach you is the universal principles. The site that you implement in will be specific, and you need to tailor them, okay? But overgrazing will be overgrazing here in China. Adapted genetics will be needed here and in the tropics, and in Siberia, and in Canada. I have students all over, from Iceland, okay? And I have a good example here in Northwest Wales, where we have been working with him for the last 2 years, and we're having the results. And I have over 33 years of experience practicing the principles that I'm about to teach. I like to take away the complicated and make it easy. No complicated grazing charts. I do it very simple, and it works better. And I seek to create balance so you have time for your family. Because to create real wealth, we need time, money, and health. If we lack any of them, we are not creating real wealth. So when we're working every weekend and every day, as we saw before in unconventional farming, we are not creating real wealth. We need to regenerate the land, as it's true that if you ask your wife, is your marriage sustainable or regenerated? That was as told by me in 2012 by Darren Doherty of Australia. He came to do the permaculture design of a farm I was working in Florida. Now I have regenerated 4 farms in my life. One had been degraded by glyphosate, applied every 2 weeks for 23 years to kill everything, sandy soil in the subtropics north of Orlando, Florida, because they had a tree nursery on 550 acres. So they hired me to regenerate that. I regenerated my own farm that we bought in 1990, as it was destroyed by conventional vegetable for export production. And no trees were there. I have planted over 1 million trees since, all with a no-till drill by seed, which is 30 times cheaper than transplanting trees. So that's very interesting. Okay, what does a spongy soil do? I already talked about. Please interrupt me at any time. I don't want your questions to grow cold as coffee would if you wait too long. I want you to ask them right away. I won't forget. I've done this. I've been doing this a long time, and I teach online courses called the Total Grazing Academy. And I've been doing this for a long time. And I really enjoy it because I am helping people to improve the planet on which we live. And they can increase their profitability to 5 times. Their productivity, 3 to 5 times. And I have the examples to prove it. Okay, so spongy soil allows good gas interchange. We know there is that thing hanging there, that the air we breathe is 75 to 78% nitrogen, but it's not in a plant usable form. To be converted to a nitrate or a nitrate, it needs soil life in the soil and a spongy soil, so there can be gas interchange. The soil our land, breathes in the evening, and breathes out, exhales in the morning. That's what causes land fog. And I have a video to prove it. Okay, it will allow a much higher, oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, here. Allows a high rate of carbon capture. We have been able to capture 55 tons of carbon per acre per year on sandy soil that was terribly degraded by glyphosate. That's a very high rate. We went from 1% organic matter to 3.18% organic matter with high temperatures. Here is much easier on sandy soil in 5 years. Spongy soil keeps nutrients from leaching out, it holds them, and feeds your plants on a demand way, which ensures a high-quality forage, strong, with complex molecules that make it resistant to insect pests. Insect pests have a simple digestive system, and they cannot digest complex molecules. So that's the way to get out of the insecticide paradigm. A spongy soil will have good structure, granular structure, and that's brought about by a glue that fungi and mycorrhiza exude, and it's called glomalin. Glomalin makes up to 20% of new humus created and lasts from 40 to 50 years in the soil if we don't till it. When we till and we saw a flush of green coming up, that's the glomalin created by fungi being digested by bacteria. So the fungi to bacteria ratio is very important. The higher the fungi is, the better. The more we will produce without added inputs. We want our inputs to be sunlight and our own creativity and management, as we will create a symbiosis between the grass, the grazers, our soil, and our economic needs. The farm is a living organism, and we should be the head of it. Okay, a spongy soil allows roots to penetrate and bring liquid sunshine to carbon cycle. The root exudates high in sugars to deeper parts of your soil profile. And you need to remember that soil grows upwards. Have you ever heard about the disappearing stones in Ireland, where they had pictures? 100 years ago, the boulder could be seen. Now the soil grew upwards and is almost covering it. And we have measured this. You can grow an inch of topsoil per year doing correct grazing management. And I'm going to show you from 3 different angles how grazing functioned before man, basic plant physiology, and actual results in different environments around the world. And a spongy soil high in humus, which is a fraction of organic matter. For example, they are doing a compost extract over there. A compost, people mistake compost for humus. No, it's not. A good compost requires to be at least 3% humus so you can do a compost extract. If it's lower than 3%, it's not good enough. So humus is different, okay? And it smells like the litter of a forest floor, high in fungi. When you smell the rain, that's actinomycetes releasing their spores. So we want to increase actinomycetes a lot. And it makes drainage much easier after a rain event, as we see on those examples out there, how the rainfall infiltrates better on pasture than on arable land. But it's because of the glomalin and the humus. And it keeps streams and rivers running for a much longer time into the dry season. Any questions up to now? I cannot hear. I am hard of hearing also, sorry. I will turn 63 this October.
Sorry, David Conforth. I've been mob grazing for... Sorry. I farm down in Kent, and it's very heavy clay soils. And recently I've been focusing on increasing my fungal bacterial ratio in the soil. My question is, can you have too much fungi in relation
No.
to bacteria?
It was thought that a 1-to-1 ratio was best, but now Christine Jones, the lead researcher in that from Australia, recognizes that the higher the fungi, the better, because fungi create humus, bacteria digest humus. And humus is our soil's real fertility, and it's the wealth of a nation. That's the truth.
Thank you.
Yeah, this just happened this year. So it's evolving very fast now with all the communication and the artificial intelligence and Google. We can access the most up-to-date information and be on top of the curve. Okay, a good soil has a porous loose layers of soil with plenty of opening gaps for water and nutrient flow to grass roots. We are told that we need to have half of the volume by solids, a quarter of the volume in moisture, and a quarter of the volume in air. We know that each percent of organic matter holds 25,000 gallons of water per acre. And that's why when we increase humus, our soils and plants start to behave as if we were irrigating in a drought and as we were fertilizing, because each percent of organic matter releases 40 kilos of nitrogen per hectare. I'm going to switch back between kilos, metric, and English because you do both. I feel crazy when we're driving and I ask how long to get there, and they tell me in miles. But then they do hectares and kilos. So, okay, I am metric. A compacted soil, on the other hand, the layers of tightly packed soil with few openings for water and nutrients to reach grass roots, and the production is much smaller. Heavy clays is more difficult. In sandy soils, it's easier, but there forms a hard, compacted layer 4 to 6 inches deep, and it's wholly created by the lack of strong and deep roots in any soil. So that's the only reason we get a compacted layer, because of lack of strong roots. My own farm, 120 hectares in the tropics in Mexico, sea level, very hot, 45 Celsius it gets. It's heavy clay soil. Montmorillonite, the one that cracks open like this and closes. So the only way to improve that soil, that it has a very high cation exchange capacity of 56, is by increasing humus content. And that's what I'm doing. Now I'm getting the results. But it took me longer when I started because I didn't know what I know now. The subsequent farms that I have regenerated myself, the first one, it took me 4 or 5 years. The second one, it took me 2 years. So it's faster once you know what to do. And my students, they are having results in 1, 2, and 3 years all over the world. And that's what I want you to get. Okay, what creates spongy soil? Well, first of all, soil life. So let's not kill soil life. Any insecticide, fungicide, herbicide kills soil life. Synthetic fertilizers kill soil life. And then our soils become synthetic fertilizer dependent or addicts. We need to slowly wean them from that in 3 years. That's the best. I did a cold turkey back in 1993 when I learned this, and everything turned yellow. André Bazin, in his book, Grass Productivity, written in the 60s or 50s, wrote about it. And he said, don't do that. Or he didn't say, don't do that. That's what I said. I did it. He said, you will go into the hunger years. And yes, sure enough, I went into hunger years. Hunger for my soil, for my plants, and for my pocket. We need glomalin from mycorrhiza. That's where it comes from. Soil aggregates from the glomalin. Carbon as humus, not as fast-cycling organic matter that the CO2 is released into the atmosphere. You know, the main greenhouse gas is not carbon. It is water vapor. All the water that was held in the soils worldwide by humus, organic matter, degraded, Now it's in the atmosphere. And it's millions and millions of hectares that have lost their real wealth by releasing the CO2 that the water vapor goes with it. That's the problem. So, yeah.
Forgot what it was. This short cycling carbon, if you've got knackered soil, surely if you cycle short cycling carbon, that will encourage photosynthesis to get the plants to grow, so you can then get the deeper carbon. Is that not?
Perfect. We need to enhance photosynthesis as much as we can. And mostly it comes from the way we graze. I'm going to go into that in a few slides.
But by increasing trampling of your forage, will that not speed up?
Sadly, no. That was taught before. That's what people keep teaching, the grazing gurus, but they are totally wrong, because you only can create 10% of all new humus created per year, per acre, is from litter.
10%.
10 to 20% from glomalin, and the rest from the dead bodies of fat microorganisms digested by a multitude of other microorganisms, and they are fed by the fatty root exudates of grass that is stockpiling. That's the only time that we can create a lot of humus. All the other things do not work. We have done trials, 13-year trial. Rotationally raised, set stock. This is in the Iowa-Minnesota border, done by Ryan Herman, one of my best students. He took soil samples, organic matter on both. 13 years later, they took it again, nothing had changed. He had the same organic matter than the set stock. All that work for nothing. Now we know why. I explained in the video, in the first video. People wrongly assume, as it's in Wikipedia and in Google, that humus is created by the decomposition of organic matter. Litter, not true. We need strong and fat and deep roots to create humus. And that's what holds the soil in place against erosion, and that's the real soil armor. When these gurus tell you that temperature on the soil goes up because you don't have enough soil armor, they measure with a laser temperature the top of the soil. Microorganisms do not live in the air. They live soil. They live under the soil around 4 inches deep. So my students have done it in every continent with soil probes, with a probe. And when you have a large amount of living roots close together, temperatures don't go up.
But do you not see in a hot climate?
I am in a hot climate.
I farm about 300 miles south of here, and the temperature is much hotter. It's 10 degrees hotter temporarily.
On the top or under the soil?
On the top, on the top.
Where do soil microorganisms live? On top of the soil or under the soil? Please measure correctly. You will be amazed that they were fairy tales. Measure correctly. We need to be observant, always. Now, if you haven't done this, but you can go to a hedge.
Yeah,
measure.
Yes, we often do that, yeah. It's
okay.
Much cooler.
I'm going to talk about trees in a while, in a savanna setting. Okay. Oh, yeah. A long rest period improves the process. Okay, that's very important. How can we allow a longer rest period in our paddocks without creating overgrazing, which is the regrazing of the regrowth before it's ready? How can we avoid overgrazing, even at very high stocking rates, which are required for profitability and productivity? Because as the cow needs the grass needs the cow. And the main determinant of profitability, 7 to 8 times more important than any other, is stocking rate. The number of productive livestock you can maintain at a low cost per year will determine your profits. You can do the math. I even have a spreadsheet for it available on my website. This brings us back to humus, our soil's real fertility. that the same drawing is over there. But this is true. And it will, increase oxidation of organic acid, increase positive links with microbes such as mycorrhiza and rhizobia, improve nutrient availability, and reduce dependence on fertilizers. And I carried it a little more. I like to call what I do beyond organic. And the beef that is being sold by my students with great success in San Diego, California, they call it regeneratively produced beef. And they can claim how many pounds of carbon each pound of beef you're buying is sequestering. And that's the new thing. He's making a lot of money. Okay, humus is the brownish black color that absorbs heat that is in your soil. When you don't have it, it turns white. If you have sandy soil, it turns white, like my shirt. Improves plant growth, has high water holding ability, is very good at storing nutrients, useful for microorganisms as they live there, and binds tiny soil particles and improves soil structure. And it just smells. You can smell it. You don't need a complicated methodology. We humans need to be an integral part of nature. Use your sense of smell, get down into your knees, and see what's happening. This is very important, to be good observers. What is the most important type of fungi for your soils? I already said that fungi create humus, and bacteria consume humus. The answer will be mycorrhiza. Without mycorrhiza, we will not have life as we have it. Mycorrhiza, well, you all know this, but it allows 300% more soil exploration and water, and it's like in the movie Avatar, where all the trees communicated underground in a network. That's mycorrhiza. It has been proven by radioactive isotopes put on a stream, and a mile high into the mountain, it appeared over there, all by mycorrhiza. Without it, soil formation will be 1/10 of what it can be with mycorrhiza. Do you all know what type of grazing created? Well, first, forest or grassland. What created the best soils in the world? A forest or a grassland? This is a question to all of you. Grasslands, yes. Forests do not sequester much carbon. It's in their trunks, and when it's burned or taken away, it disappears. But did you know that the most productive ecosystem in the world for humans is a savanna type with 30% of the area on trees? Edible trees, I might add. That's what I've been doing for 25 years now in my farm. So you see, this is with mycorrhiza, and this is without it. See the difference in growth. And this is a study done in the Serengeti in Kenya of what will happen if they took the mycorrhiza off. With mycorrhiza, this is the biodiversity and the different productivity that they would get. Without mycorrhiza, these two will disappear. This will be thin, starving, and the grass productivity will be very low. So what dies first when we apply synthetic nitrogen, or synthetic phosphorus, or we till the soil, or we overgraze? We may call it rotational overgrazing, but it's still overgrazing. We kill mycorrhiza. That's the first one to go. So I want you to open your minds. Please, a mind is like a parachute. It only functions when it's open. Albert Einstein. So I want you to consider all of this and then go home and observe what I'm going to tell you and ascertain if it's right or wrong. What is glomalin and its benefits? Glomalin improves soil physical properties, carbon sequestration, nutrient content, microbial activities, stabilizes pollutants, and eventually assists ecological restoration. We need to do this because we have, well, this continent has been doing overgrazing for longer than other places. Well, no, maybe Morocco. Soil aggregation is a complex process that glues together soil particles, minerals, organic matter, etc. And they are doing that test here in Wales. the mineral-associated organic matter. That's humus. That's low cycling carbon. The slowest cycling carbon there is diamonds. That's very low cycle. The fastest is organic matter, or when we exhale. And then there are intermediate processes. Hyphae act as a frame upon which soil particles may collect, while glomalin glues them together and protects them. Succession on the land. When we start on arable land, we start on degraded land, with very degraded, very low in humus. So we want to start the succession because nature is always striving for the highest productivity per unit of land area as possible. Now you may say, yeah, but here nature takes the land back to forest. And that's true. But a long time ago, before men killed them to extinction, there were mammoths and mastodons and other hindgut fermenters that kept the savanna open. You can still see this in the Okavango Delta in Botswana. That's the last place in the world that has this functioning. And you can ascertain this by fossilized pollen and remains of these creatures. We know that half the total biomass of herbivores was composed of hindgut fermenters, huge, and the other half, ruminants. Now we only have 3 species of domesticated ruminants to do the job and the role in nature that myriad of species did, together with the predator effect and the ability to migrate and an optimal birthing season. So those are the courses that I teach, those 4. And nutrition. Okay, soil microorganisms build soil, so we need that. Soil microorganisms are fed by root exudates. That's very important to understand. But root exudates, not sugary root exudates, they will be fed, but that will be fast cycling carbon. If we want slow cycling carbon, we need the root exudates to get fatty. We need happy plants that have a huge rate of green leaves to stem. How can we achieve that? What regrows after you mow a lawn? Leaves or stems? Leaves. Why? Because they capture energy, sunlight, through photosynthesis. And green leaves produce energy by photosynthesis, while stems consume energy by respiring. So, if you want to lower the energy content of your grass plants, your forages, and lower their storage of energy underground and in their crowns, do selective grazing that leaves all the stems behind. Selective grazing always leads to overgrazing, unless you have a very low stocking rate. And remember, stocking rate determines profitability by a margin of 8 times. Nature is always trying to get more productivity per unit of land. But we have impaired how nature functions. And not right now. This happened 50,000 years ago. We need to go back in time to relearn how this should be managed. How did grazing function before man? The savanna ecosystem gives the highest productivity of all land ecosystems and requires the animals, herbivores, and predators component to thrive. You take one of them out, it doesn't work anymore. And that's what many gurus observe, an already degraded ecosystem. And they make wrong conclusions because they didn't study basic plant physiology and they did not know how humus is really created. Now we know. In modern times, we lack the large hindgut fermenters which kept an open savanna and helped the ruminants achieve a total graze, high harvest efficiency, where there was not much combustible material left for a wildfire after they had migrated to other parts in search of more and better forages. Now, which type of herbivore requires a higher quality forage? A hindgut fermenter, like a horse, or a ruminant, like a cow? I cannot hear. Okay, ruminants require a minimum of 8% protein for the rumen to function and be able to digest fiber. hang-out fermenters, while not as efficient as ruminants, can thrive and maintain body condition on much lower protein diet with much higher fiber content. That is why when we went to Morocco to see it, we saw horses and donkeys fat on rocks, while cows were non-existent. They would have died already. So how did grazing function before man? In a savanna, this is in the Montado in Portugal. I was there in November. There you can still see how it was, it should be. So we would like to create something beautiful like that. Not rewilding, but I agree with Matt. With us living there, we need more people on the land, not less people. We are the stewards of the land. Nobody can improve, no other species can improve the land as we can. We can degrade it. Cows can degrade it if managing correctly. We can degrade it if we manage it correctly, but we have the power to transform it. So the total grazing program, is this how grazing in nature functions? Do we take everything into account? We need to be more holistic than the holistic people. We need to take everything into account. I agree with that, but not leave the most important parts outside. So how do we know that nature functioned differently before man? Well, by digging, archaeologists, finding bones, finding fossilized pollen. How do we know that 1 million years ago, and up to 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, there were almost no wildfires? By fossilized carbon. Now, look to Portugal, Italy, Sicily, France, Spain. All that combustible material left behind is catching wildfires more and more. And that creates a spiral, death spiral. Well, the large hang-out fermenters are bulk feeders. They ingest large quantities of low-nutrient food, which they process more rapidly than would be possible for a similarly sized ruminant. The main food in that category is grass. And grassland grazers move over long distances to take advantage of the growth phases of grass in different regions. You know which are the species to leave the Okavango Delta when it dries up? Which is the last species to leave in search of better pastures? Elephants. And they only leave after every tiny bit of combustible material has been processed through their digestive system. That's why when they have a fire, it's a very low fire, and animals can be around it. Here are the elephants. After eating all the mopane trees and all the available grass, at the last, after the ruminants had taken their peak and moved away. So how can we make our cows and sheep perform the role that hang-out fermenters did to restore our land? Well, forage maturity influences humus formation. This is very important, especially here, that you have cool season grasses. I'm a dairy nutritionist with 20 years experience. I'm an agronomist engineer by college, and I have an accountant degree also, which is very important in understanding that part of the high stocking rate being the determinant, but you all can do it, your numbers. And I have been mentored by the best in the world, thank God. They helped me. It is not only higher productivity and livestock health that we get with more mature forage at the moment of grazing, but also better soils as a result of having longer rest periods, which allows the roots to grow deeper and fat. What do you say about this? Do ruminants require fiber to ruminate? Yes or no? Yes, they require fiber to chew their cud. Are your cool season forages low in fiber? Yes, they are very low in fiber. So we need to allow them to mature a little more, not too much, a little more for the best livestock health. So they have enough fiber for them to be able to ruminate. And that will increase your total productivity. And that will increase your humus formation. But the first consideration is that you want your cattle healthy. And we're getting those results in the northwest side of Wales. Cattle are healthier than ever just because of this. When you have a huge imbalance of excess protein, lack of fiber, and excess sugars, because that's the form of energy in your cool season grasses, you get high pH in the body and acidosis in the rumen. And you can see the manure that it turns a white crust on top. That's acidosis. So don't do that to your livestock. Keep them healthy. And you can reduce your medicine cost by 75% at least. That's my experience as a dairy nutritionist on confined dairies of up to 3,600 cows each. The amount of fat we can produce per acre per year will determine the amount of new humus created. It is a direct relation. When plants are stockpiled without cutting them, and they can go to maturity, and we allow them to continue growing, they keep pumping root exudates, but they change from sugary to fatty. And that's when the root soil microorganisms become fat. And that's when we create humus, not when we are rotationally grazing and we are always producing sugary root exudates. Yeah?
Question from the same person.
Okay, we need a one-to-one.
Sorry, what would your answer be to a dairy producer who was rotating his cows on a 15-day round? And when quizzed on that, his answer, well, the grass will go to head. So I've got to reduce my round time.
Yeah, that's what they do in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And that's how they have overgrazed New Zealand. And that's why they have contaminated or polluted all the seas around New Zealand. The Maori tribe hired me to do an example there of how it can be done without chemical fertilizers to stop polluting. And not treating the land as garbage because they feel that the land is sacred. And they have hundreds of thousands of hectares. Okay. I just stopped milking in September. I had a grazed dairy for 28 years in Mexico in the tropics. And David Finch here in Northwest Wales, I've been working with him on a seasonal grazed dairy, 750 cow on 300 hectares. And we are winning the land of synthetic fertilizers. We're almost finished. And we're grazing like this. And he will make more money. So when you graze every 15 days, how deep do the roots get? Would you call that overgrazing or not? It's total overgrazing. The roots are short and weak all the time. And the plants rely on synthetic nitrogen. Then you're killing soil life and you're polluting downstream. Is that not even sustainable, but not regenerative? And that's what gives us farmers, livestock farmers, a bad rap with the public. So we need to change that. Then we can be able to tell our stories, the right story. That's extractive agriculture, and they are living on the humus created 100 years ago. When you apply synthetic fertilizer, it burns the humus because the bacteria consumes it. And that's what you see as a flush of growth. Let's stop that. Air is 75 to 78% nitrogen. Let's convert it into a plant usable form. Finished? Okay, great. The more lignin we produce per acre per year, the more fungi food we are creating. And this helps to shift the balance to achieve a better fungi to bacteria ratio in our soils. Fat is also fungi food. When I was told this by a soil scientist 9 years ago, I asked him, oh, then I can spray vegetable oil and I will increase the humus. He smiled and said, it doesn't work that way. It needs to be through the bodies of microorganisms that are fed on fatty root exudates. And you cannot spray vegetable oil. Well, I had to ask. So ask any question. I have asked plenty of stupid questions. Now, why having adapted genetics helps increase soil humus? When we graze, and at a later stage of maturity, our grasses, they will be lower in energy, but also lower in protein. That's why we get a much better health. And they are also higher in fiber. So if we have unadapted livestock, they will consume less because the fiber, when it's digested, creates heat. And the heat from the inside in the rumen, coupled with the heat from the outside, they reduce their forage consumption. And I call those babysitting genetics. We want genetics that are capable of digesting this much higher producing volume of forage and maintain their body condition and performance. All we need to do is select differently. Livestock, modern genetics have been destroyed or degraded by humans that have selected according to fashion and not according to how nature selects. I say that nature selects for higher and higher productivity per acre. Man has selected for higher and higher productivity per individual animal. And that's where we hit the wall. We cannot do that with low-cost inputs, with high-input genetics. We need low-input genetics. So we just need to change the way we select, okay? Having adapted genetics allows us to graze our pastures a little more mature, and that creates more humus. Then we can do what the large hindgut fermenters achieved, animal impact, along with the herbivores migrating, taking a high harvest efficiency. When you cut hay, do you want a high harvest efficiency or do you take the top third? When you harvest wheat or corn, maize, do you want to leave 70% in the floor or do you want it all? Well, this is my news to you. Your forages also have a cost to produce. Don't waste them. Create humus as it is created, not by litter, but by strong roots. So let's create strong and fat roots. And we know that in the stockpile area, when it's stockpiling, that we alternate every year. I would suggest you do it in thirds in your farm. We create most of the humus created per year. So what we have found to work best here is that we divide the acreage in thirds. 1/3 is grazed with our focus on quality in the spring, maintaining quality, not trying to cover the whole farm. That doesn't work because we incur into selective overgrazing. Graze the 1/3, and when it's ready to return, you return. When are your cool season grass ready? Clovers at full bloom, alfalfa at full bloom, and your ryegrass cocksfoot timothy when the leaves are not pointing up, but they're starting to fall down. That's when it contains enough fiber for your cattle and sheep not to scour. And this is due to the very long rest period the humus created in the stockpile areas during the green season, where the plants can achieve a homeostatic equilibrium and the root exudates become fatty. Then the microorganisms in the rhizosphere get fat, and when eventually digested by fungi, they are converted into humus instead of fast cycling carbon. This is groundbreaking, I know. It's different. It's the opposite of what we have been taught. When I was first exposed to this, I had a headache for a week. I had to take all my old knowledge out and bring in the new because I could see that it was true. It just makes sense. So these are the adapted genetics we were using in Florida to regenerate the land that had been destroyed by monthly, twice a month, glyphosate application. These are Mashona cattle, African Bos Taurus from Zimbabwe and Congo, Africa. You don't need that here. Here you have native breeds that can help you to form a composite so you can cater to the market and improve your land. That's what we do. I teach in the Adapted Genetics and Selection Guidelines online course. What about migration? Our cattle are not able to migrate, and that's why rewilding does not work, because we don't have 5 million of acres to turn them loose. They cannot migrate, so they are, in a sense, set stocked. continuously regrazing the regrowth, which weakens the roots, and it's called overgrazing. That's the definition, and that's what Ryder did in his experiment in 1955, that everyone repeats, every one of the grazing gurus, because he was cutting with scissors young plants of grass on 4-inch clay pots every other day. And he said, wow, this reduces the root growth. Well, that's overgrazing, we know, right? Okay, so don't repeat that. It is in the stockpile section where most of the new humus or slow cycling carbon is produced. This means we not only reduce our stored forage requirements, but we improve our soil at the same time. Every time you make an action or take a decision, try to get at least 3 good results from it. Thinking is very important. Be creative. Instead of looking at what the problem is and the negatives, look at the possibilities and how to achieve it. Now, this is a video. No, this is not a video. This is a stockpile warm season tropical grass in Florida. So it's a 6% protein. We need a little more for dry cows to consume it. And by having our cows have their babies early enough in the year that they are weaned by then, by December, January, they maintain their good body condition. Here they are grazing the stockpile, down to the ground, I will say, but no, you cannot see the ground. This is a 90% harvest efficiency. You cannot get that even when you make hay. When you make hay, you may be lucky if you get 80%, especially here, that you have wet dew every morning. Very hard to make hay here. And this is how it looks after grazing. See, plenty of litter. Yeah, but that's not the important thing. The important thing is to have very closely spaced plants, productive plants with strong roots. If you go to a sheep farm here, that they graze closer to the ground, you will see that the interplant spacings are excellent. A beef cow farm will have larger interplant spacing. And the interplant spacing, the amount of green leaves we have per square yard, determine our solar panel. The problem with the sheep farms is that they set stock and we get bonsai plants. Bonsai means very short. Bonsai Timothy, bonsai cocksfoot, bonsai clovers, bonsai everything. Even plantain, everything is miniature. But you need to get down on your knees to observe it. I was in such a farm 2 days ago. And this is in February, grazing stockpile. We want our livestock to be in good body condition year-round. My mantra is fat cows, fat cows, fat cows. Means good body condition, not obese, but year-round, because the immune system functions on fat. Estrogen, to produce a calf or a lamb, requires fat to be formed. So my grandfather, who had 3,000 cows, would say, give me fat and I will give you beauty. I learned that. You can see they are shiny and healthy, consuming low quality, very low quality forage that here, outside there, I was told, yeah, but if we'll allow it to mature more, it will be too high in fiber. This is 10 times higher in fiber. That's not the problem. It's the management and the genetics. Overgrazing. Overgrazing is regrazing a plant before it has fully recovered. And that is what creates short and weak roots that allow a hard moss cap to develop. Here I've seen it in set stock sheep farms. And that's why they go to lay farming. Okay? Newman Turner talks about a lot about lay farming, herbal lays. They're important, but I much prefer a permanent pasture that is correctly managed so you do not have to till it again and plant a new lay. That's because of management. I'm sorry. That's the truth. Okay, and then the moss cap develops in your soil surface and a compacted layer around 4 to 6 inch deep forms. I've seen this. I have dug in northwest Wales. And sure enough, it was raining every day and a hard cap in the surface and under it, dry as powder, the soil. But where that crust had been broken by the hooves of concentrated livestock, The water penetrated, the roots were this deep, and the forages were this tall, when on the other part, they were this tall. Miniature bonsai forages. Strong and deep roots are our best forage species are possible when we do the total grazing program, even at very high stocking rates, which are necessary to improve our soil the fastest. Going back to migration, I just realized I didn't explain that. We cannot do the rewilding by allowing the wild animals to do their job, because they will do what they do best, get fat. That's their instinct. So what we do with our livestock, we stockpile areas and we rotate those areas around the farm so that instead of migrating to another part of the country, we take them to those areas to efficiently graze or harvest the stockpile so we can maintain them in our own farm. And we also create a wildlife haven in the stockpile areas because nobody goes there to molest the wildlife. I also want trees, but we'll talk about that in a while. What do you see this here? Do you see selective grazing? This is rotational overgrazing. This is a holistic, managed for 30 years ranch in the mountains of Chihuahua. Alan Saber started in Mexico, not in the US. So this was one of the first to start. You see all these over-rested plants and these non-desirable plants not being grazed, and these good species graze and regraze every time the cattle return. That's because when they return on a rotational grazing, these ones, the regrowth will be younger, and these ones that were rejected, they will be ranker. So they will be again rejected. And calling rejected forage or leftovers stockpile is wrong. The cattle or sheep will not consume them and do the best because it's been already selected and ranked and soiled with manure and urine. So that's not correct. We need stockpile, which means you close the gate to that paddock for 3 to 6 months in this environment. In other environments like there, we close it for 18 months because it's a semi-desert environment. In the Sahara, we close it for 24 months, no grazing for 24 months. Because if not, some years it doesn't rain. When are we going to recover the plants? Recovery is very different than rest period. If it doesn't rain, it's not recovery, it's rest period. Yeah.
Can you just talk a bit more about that stockpile in this environment then? And also, you know, with the way grass grows in the UK with a very big flush in the spring, like that's our, from spring to midsummer is obviously when most of our grass grows. So could you explain how would apply these principles of stockpile?
Yes, and I will give you the example of the farm that I've been working on for 2 years in Northwest Wales. Would that be close enough? Or New Zealand or Ireland? Which do you prefer? Wales, okay. We found out that your perennial ryegrass has been selected for 100 years for higher and higher sugar and protein content, for high synthetic fertilizer applications, and for low fiber. And that creates a problem with perennial ryegrass. After the longest day that it bolts up, after having been relying on synthetic nitrogen for many years, the cell walls of the stems are not strong enough and it falls over and it rots when it rains. So what are we doing? Well, in those instances, in that dairy farm, Grace Dairy, we want to harvest it around the 21st of June as haylage, but haylage has its own problems because of the acidity that kills the rumen microorganisms that digest fiber. But we do that because if not, we will lose it. And anytime you make stockpile and you lose it, that's a waste. So we don't do that. But we are doing it with cocksfoot. Cocksfoot has not been destroyed their genetics by man yet, and is strong enough to stand up longer into the winter. But even with perennial ryegrass that we stockpile after June, it doesn't bolt, and it accumulates forage mass that you can graze in early winter. And then during the winter, grass keeps growing, much slower, but it keeps growing. So if you keep regrazing, you are overgrazing. So we allow it a very long rest period, and we graze the stockpile. Now you may say, yeah, but it gets very wet in our winters, and we're going to pog the pastures. Yeah, let's not pog our pastures. My farm is on heavy clay soil and it's level, so I'm very aware of that. So what we're going to do there this winter is to graze them later in the day, so the sunlight has increased the energy content of the grass plant, and only for 1 to 2 hours. And then take the 750 cows and the replacements that they are dry, but then on Christmas Day they are dried off. And they will be taken to a concrete pad to stand there and receive a little low-quality hay, because research has been done in Ireland, and cows can get all their requirements in 2 hours by doing this type of management. Dairy cows. This will be dried, so it's easier.
In a beef scenario?
Oh, I like that, because I switched to beef. In a beef scenario, it's much easier, but you need them calving at the appropriate time, which will be here like April. Okay. Then, you know what governs reconception on beef cows? Body condition at calving. So you want them calving at a body condition of above 3.7, 3.8 in your scale. And then they will cycle immediately after calving, 21 days later. And you can keep a yearly intercalving period. Now, for the stockpile, you do the same. I was just in a farm, Nick's farm, with Paul, that they have beef cows, and they put them into a shed, and they want to reduce that and stockpile and graze more and make less hay. And I tell every one of you, do it gradually. Start experimenting. Leave a few paddocks to grow instead of making hay, when it doesn't rot, of course, and graze it before it rots. And then you shorten that time that you need to feed hay. My clients in the US that have done this, they are saving from $200 to $300 per cow per year by not feeding as much hay. That's a lot of money. This client has 500 cows. He's saving $150. No, he's saving more. He's saving like $180,000 a year by doing this instead of feeding them hay.
Jim, there's a question here, but just conscious of time. So about another 5 minutes after this question, another 5 minutes of presentation, then we've got a good 15 minutes for questions. So, Nikki.
Thanks. Can you just go back through the 3 different areas of the farm that you said? So you've got one that's stockpiled, one that is managed for spring growth. What's happening with the other third?
That's the buffer area in case you get a summer drought. Because we did that in the David Finch farm. He was able to continue grazing in the drought that we had in May, June, while his neighbors had to start feeding hay.
So it's like a semi-stockpile?
It's a buffer area. Some years you will
how's
stockpile
how's that being managed, though?
Some years you will be able to stockpile 70% of your land. Some years you will only be able to stockpile 30%. So you need to play with it and be flexible.
But how's the buffer when you're planning your grazing for the year and you're like, right, that's my third that's stockpiled, got that. That's my third that's my spring grazing regrowth, quick around. That buffer.
Quick around? No, don't do that. That's a mistake. That was touted by gurus that don't understand how humus is created. So they want to top graze fast around the farm. That's fast rotation. And they create havoc in the health of their animals from a
yeah, sorry, I just meant quicker than the stockpile. I don't mean a quick rotation. It might still be 60 days, 70 days, 80 days.
Maybe it will be 40, 60 days. And then as you get into summer, it will get longer. But you will find out that your regrowth in your green grazing area is not mature enough to regraze till you go into that buffer third. Then it starts to rain in the fall, like now.
So it's just
and
not
you
grazed.
You go back to your green grazing area, and you allow that buffer area to stockpile whatever it can stockpile for early winter use. Yeah. That's it?
So yeah, last 5 minutes of slides, then we'll go into questions. Thanks.
This is how it looks in the green season after a total graze, and at Nick's farm, it's beautiful. They're doing exactly this. Transform your soil with your livestock. You see, this is quality or focus in the tropics. This here is different, and we take it down like this. So the regrowth has more green leaf in it in relation to the energy-consuming stems. Why? Okay, low humus is brought about by tillage, synthetic fertilizer, monocropping, herbicides, insecticides, lack of legumes and trees in our pastures. Legumes exude a fatty root exudate. Conventional overgrazing. It can be from set stocking or from rotational selective grazing or mob grazing, as they call it, which causes short and weak roots and further apart desirable species because of excess shade, which kills the growing points. Sunlight does not reach down. Fungi to bacteria, okay. I already said that. I need to go fast. Okay, bacteria-dominant soil will be dependent on fertilizer. That's why we need to slowly wean our land from them. Biodiversity, very important, above and below ground for the root exudates. Soil life and strong roots regenerate compacted soil. What we need to consider, we need to create harmony in your property. Soil, grass, livestock, symbiosis needs to reach harmony for productivity to increase at a low cost. And it needs to keep improving every year. That's how nature works. It doesn't stay there. We need to be the mastermind behind the process. And when we can reach harmony, we have a nice life in the country. The more we learn about how this works and how to fit it into our economic needs, the more harmonious our life will be. It is important to experiment, do trials, observe, and make the necessary changes in our management. Can we achieve this? Yes, we can. Here is the QR code that you can take with your cell phone to download the implementation PDF of the Spongy Soil Guide. Now, I would want you to get into my website and see what I have to offer in respect to online courses, consulting, and a membership that we have, Fat Wallet Ranchers membership. Because when you get your soil fat, high in humus, thanks to fat roots, thanks to not overgrazing, you will get fat livestock that, if managed correctly, will give you a fat wallet. Thank you very much. I'm ready for questions.
Hi, Matt Griffin from Peebles in Scotland. Yeah, thanks for your talk. Very interesting. Do you think everything you've talked about and all your principles are applicable to sheep and cows? Like, there's no difference? And if you do, then do you think maybe we've got the wrong type of sheep in our country?
You have a few native breeds of sheep that are excellent to cross with your more demanding type of sheep that most people have. For example, the mountain Welsh, old mountain Welsh, they cross very nice. And I've seen the product in June in Northwest Wales. That will be my pick right now. I don't know more. I've been told there is another native sheep breed that does extremely well at low input. We need them because we need to bring in the genes of adaptation, parasite resistance, and disease resistance into our diluted resistant sheep that we have created through the wrong selection guidelines. Yes, it all applies to sheep, and I just was on a sheep farm 2 days ago, and I can see they can double their stocking rate immediately. Yeah. Sheep are easier to do all this because of the way they graze and their biological cycle when they have their babies and when you wean them perfect. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Similar sort of question on the genetics. So I'm a dairy farmer.
Great.
So most of the genetics modern genetics in the UK, would they stand up to the sort of grazing situations that you're advocating? And where do we find the genetics to get back?
Yeah. With David Finch, we are selecting the very best cows out of 750. Cows that have productive longevity, never got sick, have above 6 calves in their lifetime, never failed. And then we weigh them to see how much they weighed per inch of hip height. And out of 27 that had the higher lifetime production of solids, we narrowed it down by weighting them and looking at the fuller package, animal package. That means they are more efficient at converting grass to milk. And then I selected the very best 7 out of 27. And they were all about 13 years old. And we are going to select their best bull calves to use to spread their genes, their TAMS genes, into the whole herd and improve the genetic progress in that herd.
So you're looking at genetics within the herd?
Mostly, right. But wait. These cattle are mostly Kiwi crosses from New Zealand. So they have pretty good genetics, but they are still a little too large. They weighed like 550 kilos. And to be able to do it all on grass here, we need a smaller cow. In New Zealand, they, 1955, the average Jersey weighed 380 kilos. Now they weigh 550 kilos. So we need to be selecting for higher and higher productivity per acre, not per cow, because that's what we sell, liters of milk per farm per year. I had a graze dairy up until September for 28 years, and that's how I selected, and the genetic progress is very fast. Now, about bringing other breeds with higher parasite and disease resistance and better nutritional adaptation, we're going to do some trials with the Shetland, native Shetland, from here. Cross with the Kiwi cross, maybe a fourth of that to create a better composite that will be better convert our grass that we produce to milk, solids, because he's making cheese, and very important, our livestock need not only to be efficient converters of grass to saleable products, but they need to improve the land on which they graze. Good question. Is that resolved?
Hello.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, I have a course on that. It's called Adapted Genetics and Selection, and it's comprehensive. It takes like 2 weeks to go over it online, and you will have coaching.
Thank you, Julia Aglenby from the Foundation for Common Land. A lot of Cumbria, this county is called Cumbria, and 16% of it is common land. That means farmers have rights, maybe between 10 to 20 to 30 to 40 farmers who are all farming the same land together. Yeah. And I just wondered how the principles, and firstly, a fantastic talk. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it. But what I was thinking was, how do we apply these principles to our commons? Because that seems to be quite a challenge whenever I've met with people, because it seems very micromanaged, and we don't have any fence, and commons there's no fence between one common and another. So you may have 20,000 hectares, 30,000 hectares, and we're not allowed to fence.
Have you heard about the tragedy of the commons?
Yeah, I have. Yeah,
nobody takes care of it, but all want to take out of it.
Yeah.
So if you all get together and you decide to stockpile the commons for a growing season, and then put all your animals there, in the non-growing season, and then take them out, there should be a legislation or something, rules, that you can put them in for 2 or 3 months out of the year. The amount of forage produced will be 3 to 5 times larger than what they're getting right now, and you will not degrade the land, and we will not get the public to get angry at us for creating a havoc. That will be my answer, because I suggested that in Rome, in Italy, that year in November, because they were creating a desert.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Jim. Thank you very much for that talk. I appreciate running out of time. You couldn't cover trees as much. I wonder if I
have
could.
a what?
You couldn't cover the tree component.
I
Of this
didn't have the
as-
time. But
I wondered if I
tomorrow
could-
I'm going to be here, and tonight we're going on a pasture walk.
If I could
I
ask
love trees.
a
I've been
spec-
planting trees for 20-some years now.
Okay. If I could ask a specific question, just for UK focused, if you could recommend, or if there are any trees you'd particularly recommend that balance soil improvement and the forageability that you were touching upon.
But let me tell you, you need them to be in rows which are easier to manage, perpendicular to the prevailing cold or hot winds, so you can have a tree shelter, a wildlife haven, a mycorrhiza under the ground touching each other row, so you produce much more grass because of the mycorrhiza. Some legume trees, so you can fix nitrogen also. And they need to be palatable, fodder trees, so you can feed them to your livestock. Then I leave one every 10 meters to grow tall, and I don't copies those. But the others, I take the fence down, electrified, high tensile wire, so the cattle or sheep can go in and browse it. What species? Alder, willow, apple, pear, mulberry, mimosa, Siberian peatrop, all of them together and planted by seed. Yeah.
Jim, so last year we had Greg Judy here, and this year we've got you. So obviously it's really good to see the different ideas behind grazing. And I feel that quite a few of us have probably tried some of your concepts and tried some of the more selective ideas. And I know there's quite...
They are opposites.
So, but when we come to the difference of livestock classes, so you've spoken a lot about your cows, weaning cows, calves off cows, so the cows can graze lower protein forages. So then when we get to the growing stock, the whatever you want to call them, weaned cattle to finish, we have found personally that we need to graze them more selectively to get the growth rate.
Did they get their butts dirty by scouring or not? Tell me.
Well,
answer honestly.
I could answer honestly, but what I prefer to say is if I'm getting...
What does a dirty butt mean?
No, well, I know. So, okay.
What does it mean? Answer.
There's not enough fibre in the diet.
There's scouring. Do you feel energetic when you are with diarrhea? No, wait. I want to take you there.
Yeah.
You will get much better animal performance by doing a total graze on slightly younger forage for those class of animals and not create a shift to undesirable species composition in your soil.
Okay, so that's...
Anytime you do selective grazing, you will create a species composition shift.
But that's fine. I understand what you're saying, but I think it's important that we talk about that distinction of classes of livestock.
Oh, I explained that in my course.
Yeah,
right
so
now it's too short.
Yeah, and it's quite easy in these discussions where we don't get into those specifics. So if we are looking, we need the growth rates in our stock to be profitable as well. So not just the number of livestock on the farm, they actually need to be growing.
You need both.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so in the UK, where if we still require an element of housing, that's our most expensive period during the winter.
Housing, yeah.
So we don't want to keep the stock on the farm for 2 winters. So if we want to have them on the farm for just the 1 winter, they need good growth rates. So I completely understand what you're saying and the science behind what you're saying. We've just got to make sure that we as the farmers are getting a finished cattle as well, because there's a lot of problems in that we're trying. There's a lot of farmers trying these concepts.
We're repeating the same thing. You want higher daily gains. Okay.
Sorry?
You want higher daily gains. Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, how do we do it? With the total grazing program. We are getting in an alpine property in southern Oregon 4 to 5 pounds per day doing this. How do we do it? We graze perennial cool season grasses at a slightly younger stage, but with a total graze. So we can keep that daily gain plus a high stocking rate without creating overgrazing or a species composition shift. And I explained it in the Model 2, Grazing in the Green Season, in my online total grazing program course. but I don't have the time right now to explain everything. Sorry. This is just a brief introduction. I would love to be here 4 days.
Question here.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks, Jim. Thanks for your speech. It was really good. I'm not a farmer, so I'm trying desperately to catch up and learn as much as I can. I've got a question about the challenges of methane. So if you're grazing on a higher fibre diet...
Not highest.
Higher fibre.
A little higher, so you do not create scours, which is wasteful. A cow and a sheep can overeat 40% above its requirements because they are scouring.
So if farmers are being asked
to reduce their methane, yeah, I work on that.
So how do we balance that? How do we balance that?
The way to reduce methane emissions of our ruminants is, now remember, methane is a cycling gas. It's not something that we are creating. It's there in the cycle. But if you want to reduce it, you just feed a small amount of biochar to your animals. And that binds and traps the ammonia being released by the excess protein that you're grazing when you graze too young. And that, along with willows and other edible trees that have high content of tannins, lower the methane being emitted by your ruminants. And you will not be liberating all the tons of CO2 that are liberated by grain farming, because you will produce more from forages than from grain. It's more profitable in a rotation. Let's say you have an arable rotation where you cash crop for 2 or 3 years and you build the soil up with livestock for 5 years. I have found out that the livestock give more per acre per year than the arable. So why not have a permanent pasture with very high stocking rates?